Due to the growing awareness of the impact of business activity on the natural environment, governments are expected to undertake actions addressing this concern. One option is to encourage or force the market to green behaviors. The complexity of the entities operating in the market and the number of links between them makes it hard to predict how different actions affect the market. The article proposes a model for the spread of green behavior in the multi-layer bank company network. We focus on scenario when the adoption of green products with banks is initialized by external influence from regulators, stakeholders on mandatory sustainability guidelines. After implementing green financial product by banks, affiliated companies are also influenced to adopt green behavior. The main goal was to study the impact of the durations and the intensity of the external influence of banks on the diffusion of green behavior amongst companies. The first stage of our research was to get acquainted with the subject of research in these fields. Empirical research was preceded by reviewing the related literature. It included the following subject: banks as element of financial system, network theory, model of green behavior spreading, banks impact the behavior of companies. The development of financial market and transaction of this market makes the financial system increasingly complex. The banking system is a key element of the financial systems. It plays an important role in promoting sustainable development and contributes to achieving the sustainable development goal by adopting sustainable practices. The behavior of the banks is influenced by regulators, stakeholders, and links between the entities of the other financial systems. Recently, several models of green behavior spreading were proposed, and the factors influencing individual green behavior were analyzed. Gaon and Tian investigated the diffusion of innovative knowledge in complex networks as a kind of green economic behavior that maximizes the benefit obtained in the knowledge diffusion process. The results showed that the knowledge is more easily spread across heterogeneous network and nodes with higher degree. Lee and others showed that unquestionably acquiring and believing in internal information by individuals doesn't favor the diffusions of green behavior. Another study, based on multiplex network and the microscopic Markov chain approach, analyzes how information diffusion influences green behavior. The results show that the little initial information can trigger a sharp adoption of green behavior. The banking sector plays a significant role in supporting sustainable development. Banks may impact the behavior of companies. There are several channels through which banks can influence the behavior of the enterprises by acting as creditors, investors, head of supply chain, or advisors. Banks may make the clients more sensitive to environmental issues and persuade them to take pro-ecological actions. The study focused on the impact of durations and the intensity of the external influences of banks of the diffusions of green behavior amongst companies, which is a new area of research.
Dear participants, my name is Jarosław Jankowski, co-author of presented study, and I will present the next stages of research. At this point, I will present model assumptions and parameters. In proposed model, we assume that for each bank and company, we can assign green behavior adoption represented by greening level. We assume that greening level can be increased during external influence, and external influence can last for some period of time, and it is representing mandatory on voluntary guidelines from market regulators. Under the pressure from government, European Union and other parties, greening level can be increased, and we assume that over the time the pressure can increase greening level, and we assume that it can not be decreased due to penalties and other factors. For external influence, we assume it takes place in discrete time steps, and it can increase greening level with probability by some predefined value beta. Alpha parameter represent probability, and in general strength of external influence. Higher the influence is, the higher the probability of portion of greening behavior is represented in the model. We also use another parameter, greening level increase, to represent willingness to adapt to green behavior. In terms of spreading model, we adopted a linear threshold model based on adoption of opinions and behavior after influence from surrounding neighbors. And if some proportion of our neighbors is sharing same opinion or attitude, we adopt this kind of behavior, and it is a common model for this kind of agent-based simulations. Linear threshold we can use for this parameter different values, and we can implement the impact of education, customer expectation, global attitudes, and higher the environmental education is, the lower linear threshold will be within the model. To compute impact of surrounding nodes, we use following formula. It uses greening level from surrounding nodes, and the impact is also related to node degree, representing the importance of the node within the network, and we can summarize for each node the greening level or neighbors, and we will receive in this way the value of impact. While spreading is divided into iteration, now I will show steps within each iteration. First, we calculate external influence using probabilities and the portion of greening level increase. And for each node, we perform these steps. Then for each bank, we calculate influence level for its neighbors within the bank layer, and the same for each bank within companies layer, because greening level can be increased from banks and from companies. We are doing same for companies, and we compute impact from companies and from banks within bank layer, because we assume that both companies and banks can get greening behavior from companies and banks. Then we update greening level for all banks and companies. And then we repeat whole iteration with new values assigned to node. The key element of the study was to build networks of companies and banks connections, realistic networks, but it was not easy to get real data. Then we decided to use multi-layer model of bank and companies proposed in paper by Montana and Lux, and it was created with the use of balance sheet structures of banks. Then, depending on bank sizes and power law distribution, it was possible to reconstruct connections, and this study presented by Montana and Lux was focused on interbank liabilities, but we use it different way with great help from Thomas Lux. For simulations, we use a set of variables, including starting greening level, influence strength, adoption rate, external influence probability, external influence time, simulation steps, and linear threshold values, with values presented within the table and in the paper. Here we will present some key results. For example, in figure I shows role of threshold values for each external influence time, and when we can achieve the highest greening level, it is achieved for linear thresholds with lowest values. For highest linear threshold, we achieve maximal value 0.2 for all the process. And for parameter alpha, we see on fig B how alpha is influencing the impact, and its role is increasing together with threshold value. Figure C shows the impact of increase of delta parameter from 0.05 to 0.1 for each threshold, and it is visible that the impact is growing together with growing difficulty of information spread represented by growing threshold. And another figure D shows external influence probabilities for used values for each threshold, and the lowest threshold, the results are similar because dynamics is high, and for higher thresholds we see that performance is growing. After that, we aggregated results to for each simulation step to see how saturation was performing during the steps of simulations up to 100 steps, and we can see dynamics for each stage of simulation. Global values for all simulation configuration we see at figure A, and average greening level is growing, especially till step 20, and then the dynamics is lower, but we can see still growth. Differences for alpha we will see at figure B, and delta for figure C. So we can see that parameter delta with a portion of adopted greening value represented by greening level increase has higher importance than increasing influence strength from 0.05 to 0.1. In both situations, we doubled parameters, but we can see distances higher for delta parameter. Next week, we can see interesting differences for average greening level for used external influence probabilities, linear thresholds, and external influence time. And we can analyze for which kind of parameters we are getting highest result and what it is worth of our investment from the perspective of governments or other institutions. What is the impact of external influence time or decreasing linear thresholds within the network? To summarize our results, it showed that external influence can be relatively low if high level of education and positive global attitudes is observed within the network. If global conditions don't support greening, the long-term influence may be not enough to achieve the highest level among companies. Increasing the willingness to adopt greening level can be more effective than probability of adoption. We identified several future directions, including usage of real networks, non-uniform distribution of parameters, or ability to decrease greening level. Thank you for your attention, and please contact us if you have any questions.